And meanwhile, the UN Security Council has been holding an open debate on the Israel-Gaza war. In his opening speech, the Secretary General reiterated calls for an immediate ceasefire. Antonio Guterres also highlighted the dire situation of Palestinians living in Gaza.
It is important to also recognize the attacks by Hamas did not happen in a vacuum. The Palestinian people have been subjected to 56 years of suffocating occupation. They have seen their land steadily devoured by settlements and plagued by violence, their economy stifled, their people displaced, and their homes demolished. Their hopes for a political solution to their plight have been vanishing. But the grievances of the Palestinian people cannot justify the appalling attacks by Hamas, and those appalling attacks cannot justify the collective punishment of the Palestinian people.
Kristen Saloomey is at the United Nations in New York. Kristen, just letting you know that the United Arab Emirates are probably going to speak soonish, and when that happens, we'll be carrying that live. Meanwhile, we're hearing reports that the Israeli foreign minister, who spoke at the UN a short while ago, canceled his meeting with the Secretary General of the UN. What do you know about that?
Yes, he said as much on Twitter, and the UN ambassador for Israel is also tweeting that he wants the Secretary General to resign. The feeling is that he was too dismissive of the attack that Hamas waged on Israeli citizens and civilians. The quote from the ambassador's tweet says, "There is no justification or point in talking to those who show compassion for the most terrible atrocities committed against the citizens of Israel and the Jewish people. There are simply no words." You just heard the quote from the Secretary General. You just heard what he said, and that actually is precisely, apparently, what they are referring to. The fact that the Secretary General, who did, let me reiterate in case you didn't hear it, did condemn Hamas's attack on civilians and said it was unjustified. But he also said it didn't happen in a vacuum. Went on to say the Palestinian people have been subjected to 56 years of suffocating occupation. That was the context for their remarks. And it looks as if they've left the Security Council chamber at this time.
And Kristen, earlier we also heard from the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. I want to hear a little bit of what he had to say and get reaction on the back.
It means Israel must take all possible precautions to avoid harm to civilians. It means food, water, medicine, and other essential humanitarian assistance must be able to flow into Gaza and to the people who need them. It means civilians must be able to get out of harm's way. It means humanitarian pauses must be considered for these purposes.
Kristen, what did you make of what Blinken had to say?
Well, he is expressing the United States' support for respect of international law, international humanitarian law, and making the point that the United States doesn't equate Hamas with the civilian population of Gaza. That said, the bulk of the first part of his remarks dealt with Hamas's attack on Israel and the need to fight terrorism in the region. He also talked about the need to prevent Iran from further supporting Hamas and other groups in the region. He issued a very strong warning to Iran and called on other nations to basically do the same, to express their concern and not let this war expand, as he said. So more talk from the United States, as we've heard, but also an appeal to the other nations to work towards a resolution in the Security Council. He said that the United States had been working closely and listening to allies and other members of the Council in order to do just that, an appeal there for the international community to come together on a resolution. Of course, it was the United States that vetoed the last resolution that was overwhelmingly supported by Council members, just less than a week ago. But again, they are working on a new version that also calls for humanitarian relief, although in a weaker form than the prior resolution did, and has stronger language against Hamas and backing Israel's right to defend itself in the country.
Kristen Saloomey reporting there from the UN headquarters in New York. Thank you very much, Kristen. We'll talk to you again.